Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. My name is Fred Studer, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at TIBCO. So we are very privileged and honored to host you all here. Usually, this is where we service not only our own employees for great food, but obviously there's a lot of neighbors around here that we let take advantage of this great space. I was actually, I think it was 3 weeks ago. Does anyone, when exactly was Diwali? Was it about three or four weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. We had this entire area filled for a celebration. And in fact, me, our CIO, who you'll see soon, and our CFO, we're literally doing Bollywood dancing right here. I won't do that, I won't share it with you, but apparently I was not too bad, so at some point we'll have to try that again.
Video?
Yes, probably. Don't search it on YouTube, though. I just wanted to make one quick statement. Obviously, you guys are all here around a really big topic. Obviously, we've got a phenomenal panel of people that are going to come up and share some great insights with you. But you know, as I've just recently been with TIBCO for about 3 months, I was talking to some of you about this great confluence of just awesome things that are happening in the market. Data and being able to manage it, analyze it, and visualize it has never been more possible. And as we think about just all of the great companies that are behind us and all the things that you guys are trying to do, the one thing that TIBCO is really trying to do is really just change the entire experience of how we use and share data. And I think every one of you hopefully will get to hear some of the great things that not only the panelists have, but we really want this as an opportunity for you guys all to network as well. So again, please enjoy the event here. We're again grateful that you came here to TIBCO and are sharing this great event with us. And with that, I want to not delay the show any further. I'm going to hand it over to my dear friend Maddie, and she'll share a little bit more about the event. But please enjoy your time today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and thanks again to TIBCO for hosting. We have had the pleasure and privilege of doing quite a few events with TIBCO. And I'm really quickly going to tell you about what the Hive Think Tank does for those of you who are new tonight, before I hand it off to Ravi, the Managing Director of the Hive, and he'll explain a little bit more about what the Hive does overall. So the Hive Think Tank is a platform that launches events and also content. So you can find us on Medium, and you can also find us on Meetup. So what we're doing is we're pushing out content and events about every other week, all around these different think tracks down here. So we have AI, enterprise, 5G, health, fintech, all these different things that we're doing to bring thought leadership and have excellent panels like the one tonight. So we're super excited about that, and we could not do this without our sponsors. Of course, TIBCO again, Avanta, Intuit, IBM, SAP, and Verizon. And without further ado, I will introduce TM Ravi, who is the Hive's Managing Director, and he'll explain what the Hive does.
Thank you, Maddie. So first I want to thank TIBCO for hosting us today. And we were here last week also. The Hive had a demo day. And thanks to Erin and Sharon for hosting us that day also. So the Hive is a venture capital fund. It funds starting at the seed stage. So we typically do seed and then kind of do the follow-on A, B, C, and so forth. So we are highly operational. So we have CTO Mohan here. We have a Chief Product Officer. So we have an operating team that's not common in a venture capital fund. And our focus is around applications and use cases of AI in the enterprise. And I see in the front row here, Nikki Gastinel, who is from our company Astound, which is basically automating the ITSM and the HR kind of, for employee kind of HR stack. And there are a few other companies. I saw Live Objects somewhere. Where are the Live Objects folks? There. So around business process optimization. So we have a thematic focus. We tend to leverage data-related technologies in the enterprise and a few key vertical segments. So if you have an idea, you want to start a company, reach out to us. Those are some of our companies, and today I would encourage you to use the hashtag HiveData and tweet about the event. We have an event on Thursday on digital twins in the semiconductor space. how a kind of a virtual model can help in accelerating the design process, reducing kind of wastage, increasing yield in the manufacturing process. It's very focused around semiconductors. That's going to be held at ANSYS, which is in San Jose. We have another event coming up that's going to be at SAP. It's kind of a companion event to today's event. It's going to focus on business processes and the transformation that's taking place there with cloud and with RPA and those kinds of technologies. So I hope you can join us in December for that. So with that, I'd like to, so first, do remember to tweet, use the hashtag HiveData. And so with that, I'd like to introduce the moderator of today's event. Win is an amazing woman. You're not going to find a woman with more energy than Win. She's a serial entrepreneur. She most recently was responsible for partnerships at UiPath, so comes from the digital transformation, business process automation space, and has started a number of companies of her own. And so with that, please welcome Win Farrar.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Tipco. I'd like to start by having my illustrious panel, these experts, amazing women in digital transformation, come up and introduce themselves. You come up on the top? Okay, why don't Wendy, you want to come up first? Thank you.
Yes, I do want to come up first. I was hoping you would call me first.
Wendy and Wendy.
Yeah. So yeah, this is actually Wendy. So we're both Wendy's.
Yeah.
So
My birth certificate.
it says Wendy.
Yes, it does. Wendy Wilson Farrar.
There you go. So I didn't think of the cool Win nickname. If I had, I would have had a much more successful life. I'm Wendy Pfeiffer. I'm the CIO at Nutanix. I've been there for 3 years. And let's see, I'm a mom. I've got a couple of kids, a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I'm married to a composer and a musician. And yeah.
She's also a Libra.
I am.
Thank you, Wendy. That's awesome.
All right, thank you, Ben. That's it. I'm Pranati, I'm the CIO at Aptus. Been there for 2.5 years. Also married with 2 kids, twin girls who are 5. So the work-life balance does and can work. I'm an adrenaline junkie, and so I used to fly planes, ride motorcycles, and I actually do seek adrenaline in IT as well.
Yeah.
It's a fascination. Hey, what am I missing?
She said she never knew that digital transformation could be so exciting.
It's exciting.
Marty, come on up.
Hi. So I'm Marty Monacho, and I am the SVP of IT at MindBody, and we're a wellness SaaS company. I am an empty nester, so I don't have to deal with that balance. My husband and I own a company as well too. We're in the olive business. We're farmers and also producers, and so olive oil and wellness go hand in hand too.
Yeah. What Marty told me about herself is that she considers herself, and she is in fact an entrepreneur, and that sometimes you think in terms of a big company, you lose sight of the fact that it's actually quite entrepreneurial, and she uses that every day in what she learns and brings into her own company here, and what she takes to MindBody, and what she takes to the olive oil company. Let's welcome Marty. Sharon, come on up. Sharon from Tipco, our host.
For coming tonight. We really appreciate you joining us this evening. It makes it much more fun to have people you're actually speaking with. So we're really excited to have everybody here. I'm the CIO of Tipco. I've been here going on 16 months now. It's been a very exciting journey so far. And if I'm not here at Tipco, or traveling somewhere for Tipco, you'll probably either find me at the Opera House in San Francisco watching a ballet, or at the Shark Tank watching a hockey game, or if I can get outside, I'm on my bicycle, sometimes pretending I'm on the Tipco bike team, but I'm not nearly that fast.
That's awesome.
Bits, bytes, and ballet. Hey, can everybody hear me in the back? I just want to make sure the mic is micing right. Okay, cool. All right, so we have some other people here in the audience that I would like to give a shout out. Paul Burrell, a serial entrepreneur that's been in the industry for a very long time, a dear friend of mine, someone that you want to talk to about digital transformation. We have Vish. Would you stand up, please? Yeah. Vish Mishra. Oh, many of you already know Vish. I'd like to give him a warm welcome, though. He is in charge of Hive. Where is, let's see. You stand up and introduce yourself. The Wizard. Go ahead. Don't be shy. What's that?
I'm Ted Selger. I make things.
Ted Selger is he's the former IBM fellow, and he was also a professor at MIT in charge of digital transformation there as well. So thank you. Welcome, Ted. Want to trade? No pressure. You are the experts. You are the experts. And we have some other people as well. I mean, I'd just like to give a shout out to a bunch of people from Slalom are here. If you want to give a wave, Slalom folks. We have some people from PwC. I think quite a crew from PwC. If you guys want to give a wave as well. We have a former colleague of mine from UiPath as well. So these are some people that you want to talk to. And we also have a neighbor of mine, Tom Buchholz, who was actually the deputy CIO for the U.S. government many years ago. So I think co-CIO. Thank you. Okay. So we have got a great crowd. But you know, when I was talking to Tom on the way in, and we were saying he was a CIO many years ago, a number of years ago, 30 years ago to be exact. And you know, when I started many years ago, my career, I've actually been in the industry for quite a while, there really was no such thing as a CIO. There was not a big known thing. What does a CIO do? And in the light of, you know, all this digital transformation, there's a lot of change in terms of CIO, and what does it mean in light of CIO? So is there anybody that would like to hazard a guess or say, what does digital transformation mean in light of CIOs these days? Anybody? Otherwise, I'll turn it right to the panel. Anybody want to guess? Slalom, PwC, no, you guys don't want to stand up and say? Okay, good. All right, well, before we get started, we're going to do one more thing then. A dear friend of mine, her name is Preeti. Preeti, where are you? Stand up. It is this lady's birthday. She has chosen to celebrate it with us. I think we have a cake. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Preeti. Happy birthday to you. Make a wish. Make it good. Okay, very good. There you go. Thank you. So, yeah, we'll share. We can cut it up. We'll have dessert. That'd be great. Thank you. Everybody gets a bite. So I'd like to start, I'm going to ask Wendy, I'm going to put her on the spot, start to talk about, you know, your own digital transformation and what happened at Nutanix. And we talked a little bit about this in terms of how you're using your technology, the value of technology and that. Go ahead.
Sure. So when I came to Nutanix 3 years ago, I arrived in January, and I was presented with our VMware true-up bill. And it was in the millions of dollars, and I discovered that we were one of the largest license holders of VMware in Silicon Valley. And what was interesting about that is that we actually made our own hypervisor, and it was free. And so I thought immediately, okay, I'm going to be fired. I went home and told my husband, like, wow, this Nutanix thing, it was great for a week, but it's over. But what I then learned is that the wonderful engineers who had made our hypervisor, this product that was performant and feature-rich and all of that, they had built the product without thinking about operationally how would we consume it and how would we make it work in our environment. And one of the first things that I had to do in order to use the product was to migrate tens of thousands of VMs from ESXi to our hypervisor. And so I talked with them about it, and the engineers said, oh, you want to like move hypervisors? Well, we didn't know you'd want that. We have like this product this feature we were building, but it'll just take us another couple of weeks, and then, you know, we'll give it to you and you can do this thing. So it struck me that this was just the example of everything that always happens to IT and is at the core of our sort of half-born quest to digitally transform. See, there's this thing about IT, which is that we're engineers, yes, but we're not just engineers. We're also operational experts. And we live at that confluence, or some would say conflagration, of technology and operational excellence. And we're constantly just working through that again and again and again. It's like Groundhog Day with each new round of vendors. You know, we wake up the next day and we've got to work through the same problems again. And so in 4 weeks, they said it would take 2, but it always takes twice as long. In 4 weeks, we had a data mover product, which is now just a feature, part of our product. And in short order, we were able to save a ton of money and transform the way that our hypervisor made use of system resources and actually transform our environment into more like a private cloud, with all the elasticity of storage and compute and so on that folks enjoy in public cloud. And today I run in hybrid mode. But in fact, the technology was sitting there, right? The engineering work had been done, but the operational work was still missing. And so I believe that at the core of this digital transformation is, at the very beginning of it, is an understanding of the business and the process and this thing we're trying to transform. We're not just throwing technology or the latest technology at something. Instead, we're thinking about how technology can completely change, completely make different, evolve to the next level, or revolution, not evolution, right? Yeah. Those internal processes. And in that sense, the technology, the engineering, it's secondary.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
but it's secondary. Sort of like, the act of procreation is secondary to the child.
Right, well, that was primary.
I thought I'd go right there. I'm starting with that, okay.
I need that water. Sharon, we were talking before, I think you hit upon something very key, is that when you're starting on any kind of a transformation, I mean, sometimes transformation happens to you, you don't choose it, other times you're choosing transformation in life. And so, you look at what is a digital transformation. You said if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. What is digital transformation to you at TIBCO? What does that mean?
Sure. So for me, it's about using data and technology to achieve resilience and velocity or speed to deal with the fact that we can't predict what's going to happen to us next, and we have to be able to react. Our business models or our customers' business models are changing, are being disrupted, and you have to be able to use data and information to move extremely rapidly to stay abreast of your competition. And the way you do that comes back to people. I always say it's about people. It's about using that data and information to create great customer and great employee experiences. And we at TIBCO are going through our own transformation because TIBCO was a company that built products that shipped them to be run at their customers in certain ways, and kind of once it was at the door, unless a problem, and TIBCO built very solid software, unless there was a problem, they called sport, it was kind of out of our hands. Well, now we're allowing our customers to use products anywhere and everywhere they want to be run, to connect all of these devices. That changes every single process in our company. We're no longer just shipping bits. Maybe we're provisioning things in the cloud. Maybe tomorrow they're going to move from one region to another. Everything we have to know about our customers and see and do with them. Everything inside the company is being exposed to them on the outside. And sometimes, because of the way companies ran, what's inside isn't very pretty. So you really need to transform that in a way that enables your customers to be successful. And so both with the products we build, and much like Wendy, we're using our own products. Actually, I have a gentleman here who's, my Tubco on Tubco guy, and helping us figure out how we apply those things to make our experiences, our employee and customer experiences be the way to show our customers.
Yeah, and I think that, such a key point is that there's a great convergence in terms of the customer and the employee. And you really have to serve both of those, not just the customer or just the employee, but you have to serve both. And you have to recognize that customers today are seeing way deeper into the organization than they ever were before. Marty, when you first started at MindBody, you were saying that you, in fact, were responsible for both of those monster objectives in terms of driving the business, was making sure that the internal, your employees were happy and your customers are happy. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the digital transformation and what that meant for you in terms of key objectives that you were trying to drive towards, your sort of your North Star for vision?
Yeah, sure. When I first joined MindBody 2 years ago, I was fortunate that I had the responsibility of running our product platform for our customers, as well as our internal business systems and IT as well too. And so, and I had previously, as CIOs at other companies, been really focused on internal, but always with product companies where the customer was always, like a CIO as well too. So a lot of customer and internal type of focus as well. So at MindBody, what I was dealing with was I had 4 on-site interviews, and 2 of those interviews resulted in, not because I was there, but we had product outages. So I kind of knew that I was in for, a fun ride with them, and that we really needed to get on top of that. So focused a lot on what our customers were experiencing. And then we got a handle on that just around the same time that we acquired 2 companies, and one of the companies that we acquired had previously acquired a company that they hadn't integrated. So all of a sudden I had 3 companies that were integrating on the product side and also on the business side for our customers. And so we weren't prepared for that in any way, shape, or form from a product perspective or even from an internal perspective.
So what would you do?
Well, we split the role in 2, and but that took several months. But we really needed to be able to kind of have 100% focus on both sides, but still not disconnect those sides. And so with the experience that I had with directly dealing with our customers, as well as what our internal systems and internal business users needed, what we are working on today is making sure that our internal systems and our internal processes also serve our customers. Because it's not just what they're seeing with the platform that they're using, but it's every interaction that they have with our company. It's about how they feel about us, and if they feel that we can't even manage our company, then why do we think that they should be able to believe that we can run their company? And so it's like really kind of like opening up and letting them see what we look like internally as well.
Mm-hmm. And how's that working out?
It's challenging.
Yeah.
No, we were also acquired last February by Vista, and so we're going through a massive transformation project with both our internal systems and our product, really looking at what the market needs. And the good, fun part about that is that that was a clear inflection point where we had to do something different. And so just because your parent company is telling you have to do something different doesn't mean that you as a company embrace that. And so part of that digital change is actually winning the hearts and minds of our employees because we need them on this journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of why it's so important to have the employee as part of the journey, why they have to understand the vision? Why does that matter?
Because they'll resist. I mean, that's the easy answer. You can lay out all this great stuff, but if they resist, you're going to fail.
Yeah. So there's really like sort of a wrong way and a right way to do things, right? Like if you want to have a good digital transformation project or program, you want to make sure that everybody's on board at different levels within the organization. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. So build trust. Pramnit, do you want to talk a little bit? say your name again.
Pranati.
Praniti, okay, just try it. I'm big on getting names right. Praniti, thank you. Can you talk about, what happened to you at Aptus when you came in and when you're looking at digital transformation and what that meant? Yeah.
So very similar to Marty, I joined Aptus about 2.5 years ago, and about almost a year back, we got acquired as well by a private equity company, Thoma Bravo. And one of the things that I think most private equity companies are very well known for is operational excellence. Right? So they're coming in, they're not here to stay. They want to turn the company around into a really sort of high-performing, healthy state, and they want to exit. Right? That puts a lot of pressure in a very, very short time, I think, I think you can relate, yes, a very short time to actually bring in a lot of change that can impact the business performance. Right? And it's truly something that they are very, very engaged in. It's a metric that we are measured against on delivery. And every 3 months, practically, and I have members of my team here, every 3 months we're rolling out large programs that are impacting either our internal users or our processes, and really, I'm hoping, adding a lot of value. Yeah, but it's really an every 2.5, 3 month cycle right now.
Well, I think
And these are large programs,
Yeah.
not exciting programs, and I always say, you come to Aptus if you want to do a 5-year enterprise-wise large roadmap in 18 months.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think that, you touch upon something important, which is that, you can look at digital transformation as this enormous program or project, but it's really broken down, or can and should be, into smaller iterative successes. So you have to look at what is the end goal, what is your North Star, and then take it back and say, what are we going to do along the way to achieve that? Right, yeah. Wendy, do you want to talk a little bit about, I think what's interesting is that you heard 4 different women talking about 4 different transformation programs within their organizations, and they're all different. I mean, there's some similarities, but they're all different. So I'd like to hear from you in terms of the process that you went through, in terms of how you initially got your executive buy-in when you said this is the mission statement, leveraging a mission statement to really take it forward in terms of a project.
So I'm a real believer in metrics, and one of the things that I needed to do is find a common language for us internally. And so I chose a couple of metrics. One was a quantitative metric called FTR. It stands for First Time Right, and it comes from lean programming. And essentially what I did is I just instrumented us internally to measure everything we do in terms of FTR. And FTR for us has a couple of key components. One is the optimal workflow, and so we were able to document or describe that optimal workflow, first your socks, then your shoes, otherwise it doesn't work. And then also the optimal interaction design, right? You're not going to use your teeth to put your socks on, you're going to use your hands if you're able to do that, right? So that optimal interaction design and that optimal workflow are the starting point, that description of FTR. And then it's really easy for anyone to measure whatever it is we're doing in light of that description. And you get a 0 if you missed anything, and you get a 1 if you got it right. And then the other measurement is NPS, Net Promoter Score, and it has to do with just how people feel about what you did. So a lot of times in IT, we'll get our process just right, and people wish us dead because it was so inefficient or frustrating, or we were so mean-spirited or insular in delivering it. And so by creating these measurements, then we got everyone engaged, from the CEO to the folks who helped to serve lunch, in just measuring ourselves that way. And then we would get together as a leadership team, and this is the entire senior leadership team, even the marketing guys, and we would take a look at everything we were doing, and we would stack rank the worst to the best. And the worst areas were the things that we prioritized for digital transformation, and particularly for some application of modern technology. And then we would measure before and after. So tiny examples. This didn't have to be giant. These were little things. one of the worst things that we did is deliver software to employees. There was a whole process they had to go through. Yeah, it was one of the worst things. It was terrible.
Don't do that.
You know, you can imagine like some new attorney came on board. We were growing really fast. We're still growing really, really fast too, adding thousands of employees, acquiring companies. So some new lawyer would come on board and say, okay, you know, I've negotiated this contract and I want to use DocuSign to get signatures, and he or she would call over the wall, you know, how do I get DocuSign? And someone would say, you know, well, you log into ServiceNow and you go to the IT section and you pull down the pull-down menu and then you choose, you know, software, and then we get approval from Department X to see if it's in the budget, and then we check the license grant to make sure we've got a grant. And so, of course, what that employee would do is they would download, you know, what consumer DocuSign, right? Totally logical. There goes the company's IP off somewhere in public cloud, right? And they'd move on. So first of all, we didn't even know that was happening because they hated us. They didn't want to talk to us, right? And then, you know, secondly, how inefficient and frustrating is that for someone coming on board? And so we were able to apply just some modern technologies, just some machine learning and natural language processing tools to change up that process. So now an employee can ask in Slack or verbally, you know, I need DocuSign, and our machine learning, our AI delivers DocuSign to their device.
Yeah, I have a feeling that she didn't know that they were getting DocuSign and things because they didn't want her to know, right? They were sort of hiding it from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I myself, as the head of IT, was sneaking around like with, you know, my own Dropbox because it was easier than that's what we do as humans, right? We're trying to find that easiest path.
Yes.
But in bulk, that leads to sort of huge inefficiencies and extra expense. So it was just, you know, shining a light on that with these simple measurements and having this common lexicon that would allow us to, you know, I mean, we were bragging, you know. You think you're bad, man, we got it. Before this, I didn't even know. Did you know you can get negative numbers in NPS? You get negative 140 is as bad as you can go. I happen to know personally.
Yeah, I get it right the first time. So in terms of like when you're setting a charge and you're going out and you're embarking upon your digital transformation, how important is it to like put a big stake in the ground or a big vision statement of what you're doing? Do you guys have any examples of those that you'd like to share?
I mean, my perspective is that they have to be bold changes.
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at processes and you're looking to actually transform, the little tweaks, the lifts and shifts, you know, just doing the integration or the automation is really not where the value lies. Mm-hmm. For example, and this actually happened on a Slack channel that Sharon and I are on, we were talking about Aptus CPQ. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of CIOs on that Slack channel talking about Aptus CPQ and competitors, and of course I had to weigh in. And one of the conversations was, you know, well, which CPQ did you pick and why? And I was like, listen guys, I mean, you know, I'm re-implementing right now, Aptus for Aptus.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of it, and I actually think you cannot re-implement something like that, which is a core system for your quote to cash, without rethinking a lot of the processes.
Yeah.
One of them that we did and that we led the charge on was completely changing our product packaging and configurations. This was an IT facilitated project. It was not a business-led project because we did not think, when we started looking at the analytics and when we started looking at 3 years of orders and attach rates, we didn't think we were selling the right packages.
Yeah.
And so we actually rallied all of our business users together. We charted out that in 8 weeks we will do a readiness phase before we even start implementing CPQ. Mm-hmm. Right? We're going to completely shift our product packaging. We're going to look at our list pricing. We're going to change what our discount thresholds are to reflect the actual ASPs and what the market is looking at right now. And it was really a process program. It was not a technology program. It was not something that, you know, we were looking at to actually do a system implementation on until much later. And one of the conversations back during that Slack channel was, yeah, right, so you're going to do CPQ and we're going to change all the product packaging. But it's true. You've got to make...
There's no value in the profit.
That's right.
You're just
got to
taking
make
one
bold
tool.
moves.
You're just
Right.
taking one tool
Exactly.
and trading it for another.
That's right.
And you're
then
dragging
you
the
blame the tool.
problems you had, and then you're getting the problems of the new tool you bought that you
right.
didn't
Faster,
understand
maybe,
how to
right.
leverage. Right.
Problems go faster, that's
Right.
great.
And there is a lot of thought process out there saying, okay, the program is already a huge program. Normally in companies, CPQ can last like a 9-month program, right? As you start to add value, sure, but it's a pretty large type of program. And now you're going to add all of this. In fact, I think we shortened the time.
Yeah.
Because we did
Well,
a
you changed
focused
it.
effort on
So
the
you,
process.
so you got to
We
dollars
shortened the time.
faster. You got to dollars faster. I think this is interesting. We talked earlier about the CIO role and how it's changing. And you know, CIOs today, it's not just about making things go faster or more efficient. It's about really enabling the employees to drive towards a specific business outcome. So you're looking much more to business outcome. In this case, you're saying that the CIOs and the CTOs, I mean, you're leading that business outcome and you're saying you're bringing it back. And so that, it seems, is one of the really key features when you're trying to sell this, or when you're selling it to your senior executives, your CIO, or excuse me, your CEOs, and also I think the people internal to the organization. We had talked about this before amongst ourselves, and that this sense that if you want people to follow a certain process or do something, a change, they have to understand why it matters. Because if they don't understand why it matters, why are they going to go ahead and do it, right? And it's,
The other thing there too is that, you know, why does IT lead these type of projects and programs? It's because we truly are cross-organizational. And so this transformation project that we're doing right now with Vista, they came in and they said, this is a business project, this isn't an IT project. And they were wondering, why are you stepping up to take the leadership in this program? And it's because there was really nobody in the business that actually understood kind of the cross-organizational nature of this, because they would optimize it for their own special needs and their own special groups, which is exactly why we had the problems that we had today. It was because everybody optimized for themselves and didn't really think about the connective tissue between things.
yeah, I think
Compromises the whole.
that's a key point. And I was listening to a Gartner webinar earlier, and they were talking also about that, is that you want to make sure that you're not at cross purposes with other people in the organization, that you have a similar goal and a similar vision across the company. Because otherwise people will just do what is best for them in their organization because that's their job and that's what it's tasked for. Go ahead. Can I say something?
Well, I was going to say, sometimes you're the person who sometimes I feel like I'm a United Nations peace negotiator. Right? Because that alignment doesn't happen naturally amongst executives because they're measured on what's going on in their world. And to create these transformations, if it's a transformation, it's not one department. It's cross-functional by definition. And I find myself spending most of my time helping people get to a point where what's important is consistent enough to actually deliver a program that's going to work and change something and change a business outcome and how we operate. So for me, we spend so much time talking about AI or this tool, but back to the point you made, this is really about people. At the end of the day, it's about people, and it's about how do you change your organization to be able to relate and understand what that broad group of users and customers need, and how are you then bringing together your peers in leadership to agree on what that goal is, because I don't get to set it.
Yeah.
But I can bring people to it.
What are some of the specific things that you did to bring people together? What are the actual things that you did? Did you have meetings? Did you send emails? What was the campaign like that you want to explain to people that we're going to have this digital transformation? Here's why we're going to do it. Here's what we're doing.
Well, I don't necessarily walk around saying I'm going to do a digital
I know you
transformation.
We actually,
The reality of
does
what
anybody
we're
actually use that term? I don't think we use that term,
Right,
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
we're trying to achieve, again,
The
this
goal.
business outcome.
Right.
Here are the group of stakeholders that have to engage in this.
Yep.
Here's how, I also had to reorganize my team fundamentally to better align with how the business is organized to bring those results to bear. But I don't walk around, going, okay, digital transformation.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
like
I'm
you don't
doing.
get the t-shirt that said, we're going to do a digital transformation project. Yay, okay.
I mean, the company was in the middle of it before I got here.
See, I think
Well on its way.
this is a fascinating topic for me, because we're talking about, I think we're saying that the goal is to find some alignment to get folks to agree. But at the same time, diversity of thought, diversity of opinions, that iron sharpens iron thing. There are some companies that thrive on that. My company, and the last couple of companies, GoPro was another one of those, that thrives on that. That not automatically, everyone doesn't automatically agree. We don't have the same opinion. We might not all be motivated the same way. And so getting to action doesn't necessarily mean getting to agreement. And so one of our corporate values is disagree. What is it called? Show grit, disagree, but commit. And so we sort of do this thing where we share our differences of opinions and then come together. So I think that's the power of digital transformation, or the power of technology, is that it can support so many nuanced dimensions of the same path forward.
Yes.
Technology enables that, especially these newer technologies, math-driven things like AI, enable this, many-to-many path forward.
Yeah.
And that's super fascinating to me, so if later we could talk about that.
No, let's talk about it now, actually. I think it's a perfect segue. I mean, you set the stage, you've got your mantra, you're going forward on that, and then at what point do you bring in, because first you're setting the business goal. First you're saying, what are you looking at? What's the business outcome? Then you're looking at the technology. That becomes almost secondary. One of you said, if you don't know what your business outcome is, I mean, the technology becomes meaningless. Right, so
what if there are multiple outcomes? What if there are multiple good things? I mean,
What I was going to say is sometimes agreeing is agreeing to disagree, and using the technology to enable multiple things to happen. And in current architecture, it's the microservices architecture. It's not everything being so dependent on one or two core systems, but enabling different parts of the business, acknowledging that they have to have different goals for a period of time to coexist in their different spaces, but yet yield a greater whole, at the top of the results.
So IT standards, we have Gmail, and we have the Mail. We have Microsoft, and we have Google, living in harmony. Not really, but I am constantly beating up on Google, constantly beating up on Microsoft and saying, look, we like some of the capabilities of Google Docs. We like Outlook. We want to use Outlook and Google Docs together. When on my mobile device, in the consumer space, when I've chosen to use Facebook, I don't say, well, that's it, Facebook is my standard for, social networking, and therefore I can possibly use Twitter. Like, human beings don't do that.
Yes.
So we shouldn't have to do that internally at work either. And I think that's one of the components of digital transformation, is creating those environments or platforms or messy primordial soups of many applications that are working well together, or the best components of applications to support that, the multiple directions heading in that same direction. It's messy, it's hard to talk about. I got to do a lot of hand waving, but that's the transformation, is in creating technology ecosystems that support how people work, back to that thing we're all saying.
So part of your role is really keeping the balance of the ecosystem. Is this what you're going to say, Frankie?
Yeah, so I actually have a slightly different take to it. And part of the reason is, I think you have to kind of compare it to your home. You have, you've got 4 people in your household. All 4 people are normally on similar tool sets, because you're collaborating with each other. Right? And I actually think about it like that. I do want consumer tech in enterprise, because that's what people are used to. The ease of use, the UI, that I believe we need to bring into enterprise. However, you ask my kids what movie do they want to watch on a Friday night. That'll be 2 different answers. And you have to actually get in there, influence, so we can all have a good evening and watch a movie. And I have to say, it's exactly the same concept.
You have little kids, huh? We just go to our rooms.
Right? So you can have a good Friday evening. when you take this to work and you ask somebody, you know, which collaboration tool would you like to use? Slack, Teams, or a document management tool? Would you like to use Google Docs? Would you like to use OneDrive? You're going to get 3,000 answers from 3,000 people. And really, one of our jobs, and one of those business outcomes, is to have everybody work together.
Yeah.
To get to that operational excellence, just like we do in our household. You know, if me and my husband were on different bank accounts, or different banks, or different, like completely, everything being different, it is harder for us to work together as a unit. And that is the exact same principle I like to kind of bring into the enterprise space and say we do want to work together, we have to arrive at the right solution. It cannot be one for one, and every person gets what they need. And it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
On the other hand, I don't want to take away from that consumer tech. We want the best experience. It doesn't mean that everyone gets what they want. They still want the best experience. And that, I think, is important. You know, so that's, I think, one of my sort of, one of the areas that I focus on is we've got to bring that agreement, and they can disagree, but they agree for the whole.
Yeah,
And we move forward.
So it's educating them on the importance of, again, that shared mission, the shared importance of making the company successful, driving that into the market, making the customers happy, keeping them happy, and then how you combine that all by accepting something that may be disparate, by bringing it together.
That's
Just,
right.
just different
Together.
things. Yeah.
I'm waiting for the pricing model when they figure out the technology.
Oh, the pricing model,
Please,
CPQ.
please stay on
Yeah.
that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, doing that in a way that we can
Right.
afford and the dollars you're paying match the value you get for that
I think there's
disparateness, yeah.
There's a lot of tools out there that help us with that, though. I mean, you know, vendors who come into my environments know that they need to be good members of the ecosystem. So nobody gets an unfair share. I don't do multi-year agreements, but I do like multi-year discounts. Right. I mean, but really, all of those things are you know, a foil for what we're all trying to do, which is figure out ways to interoperate. If a vendor wants to work in my environment, then they need to follow our design rules, which have to do with integration and AIs and things that allow us to integrate. Ultimately, you know, what is it now? They're saying by 2030, 70% of the workforce, the people, the employees we're enabling, are going to be, you know, Gen Z and millennials. So Gen Zs and millennials do not think like, oh, I'm going to use a laptop and I'm going to use the company supplied. No. When I worked at GoPro, I mean, I was the CIO at GoPro. The CEO did not own a laptop. He did everything he did on a mobile phone. Everything, and he ran the company. It wasn't, you know, a casual deal. So that required me to think differently. If I'm going to enable those employees, the 90% of the employees there who were under age 29, I have to enable them to be productive with a different approach. And I think that's a challenge. That's the next transformation. Is this workforce is completely different.
Well, I think that has been something that we've been, you know, talking about for years, which is, you know, kind of, you know, back in the day when all of a sudden someone would ring in a Fry's ad and say, like, you know, I can get this laptop for $199. Why are you charging my department $3,000? You know, oh, it's got to be enterprise class.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be enterprise class? What are we doing that's so different? So I think that we really do have to think about kind of our tools and evolving them and making sure that they're keeping up and, you know, continuing, you know, the continuous evolution so that we are productive and that we are, you know, this digital transformation is not just a one and done.
Yeah.
It's continuous.
So
So we need
speaking
to
of that,
reevaluate.
What do you see that's coming in? I mean, how much in terms of machine learning and AI? Those are also you know, fraught with different definitions as well. When someone says, "What is AI?" or "How are you using AI?" Can you talk about, you know, bringing in different technologies to do things that you hadn't anticipated before, or what you're even looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, so from a product perspective, I just met with our new AI leader today. He's got lots of great ideas, and he's worked at, you know, IBM and Microsoft, and you know, and he came in and said that his mission is the product, and I said, the product needs to be bigger than the product. So all of this needs to work together. So we're getting together next week to kind of look at like what should our AI ML strategy be for this company, not just for the product.
Yeah.
I'm not the CTO, but I started the technology steering committee and invited anybody in the company that has kind of a technology-based role to collaborate and to share and to actually make sure that we are leveraging each other's ideas. And it doesn't have to be because you're the CTO with that title or you're the CIO. There's many different groups that are technology focused and we need to bring them together.
Can you talk a little bit about governance as well? In terms of how you brought in these technologies and you're setting these things up, how do you govern that? What are the bounds that you put around it?
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah.
We do some of that standard sort of, what you might expect with new technology assessment and introduction.
Mm-hmm.
But we also want to be able to have some things that are really just proof of concepts that we are looking at them for, like maybe they're not going to become part of mainstream in our organization and in our enterprise, but we need to be able to look at those and see how they might be able to affect our work in the future. So you need to have both.
Mm-hmm. What are the types of things that you're looking to do in the future? As you embark upon your own digital transformation, what's the next big hairy goal that you have out there?
Well, first of all, is getting through this lead to cash process with integrating all these companies that we've acquired and more on the horizon. So we need to do that. But in addition to that, then it really is incorporating some of the machine learning and AI into those business processes. We're looking at it in the IT space right now, just from a support desk perspective, not growing our headcount as we're growing our staff. We are peeling off a couple of people out of our support organization, one of our more entrepreneurial managers, to give her this role of putting that future state together. And I love that it's a woman too.
Yeah. Someone did comment. Actually, I got a couple comments that said, "Gee, you don't have a very diverse panel." But Robbie said he looked for the best, and so so, give a round of applause for that. What are some of the things that I'll open this to any of you? What are some of the things that you wish that you knew before you sort of really got into this whole transformative space? What are some of the advice that you wish someone had given you?
Well, I would have taken better care of my knees.
Oh, yeah.
It's just always painful. I think for me, I tried to play my role. I tried to be the technologist first. And I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had been sort of a human being, an employee first, and kind of had the same visceral reactions that my team members do. In my real life, I love video games. I play video games. I watch the setup shows, and I love how they build out these amazing gaming spaces. And in my real life, I love social media, and so had I come in as that real person and led with that,
Yes.
I think it would have been so much easier to have the kind of engaged conversations that we need to have across the various divisions and so on. It sounds a little simplistic, but if you come in as the IT nerd who is talking about pick something IOPS or governance or IT PPM or standards or whatever, then you've lost 2/3 of the audience, not their attention, but their energy. They're not gonna help. Transformation, whether in chemistry or in life, takes energy.
Yeah.
And we need to get to that synergistic moment where the reaction is greater than the sum of the parts, and that thing doesn't happen just because I'm excited.
Yeah, you have to get other people excited.
Yeah, and not just excited, but willing to do the super hard work, willing to come back and tell you the truth, willing to share resources or change their processes or wait for something until we can bring it to them. So I wish I had just known to be more confident and just be the wacky, crazy human being that's me, and come in with all my likes and dislikes and thoughts and fears and crazy ideas, because that's more compelling than, you know, talking about a racy or a rapid or whatever other, you know, IT speak that we use to cover over the fact that we're scared.
Yeah, I think there are a couple, I mean, there's so much that you just said, just in terms of being human and being yourself, you know, that I think comes with wisdom over time, or age. I mean,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just to be yourself. Well, you mentioned the knees, so I figured. To really just be who you are, basically. But go ahead, you want to say
Well,
something?
what I was going to say is, you know, I grew up, I was a software engineer, right? So I was raised a technologist, right?
Yep.
And became a business and a people leader later, right? And I think if you come from that background, you have this sense of, I have to do all these things to get it right. And while we're spending all of our time getting everything perfect, the business opportunity left town.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish somebody had told me it's okay not to be perfect, and it's okay not to have it all working on all dimensions, because being perfect after the fact, nobody cares, right? Having great IT, if you don't have a business to serve, you know, who does that help? Certainly doesn't help the employee base of your company. You might go home feeling good about yourself at the end of the day, because I did this thing I was supposed to do. But learning how to let go of that perfection, when you were the perfect student, building the perfect architecture, writing the code the perfect way, that was the big transformation for me. And I think it started to happen because somebody, for some crazy reason, had me run a leadership program where I was supposed to teach other people how to do it when I didn't know how to do it myself.
How would you advise our friends out here to say to develop that discernment, to develop that judgment? I mean, how do you do it? I mean, yes, you get it through making errors and trying. We talked about a culture of being able to do it.
I think it's by surrounding yourself with people who have perspectives that are different than yours, and understanding what's important to them that might be different than what's important to you, and developing that empathy and that listening, because you're not going to find it yourself, and you're not going to train. You need to learn it from others, and so don't be shy. Ask for help. But these are all things that, diversity.
You remember the great Tony Young told me one day, he was my boss briefly, he told me one day, look, Wendy, you can be right or you can be dead right. You don't want to be dead right. That's at the core.
Yeah, so that gets to the point of making friends with different people. I remember years ago someone taught me to, it was a sort of a small networking company, and I was taught to go out and make friends with lots of different people, which was my natural inclination anyway, so you might have guessed. But but to know different people in different organizations and get to their perspective, because that's when diversity, this whole thing of diversity really matters, is this idea not just a checkbox, but that you actually getting different perspectives. So today we're getting a panel of women perspectives of women CIOs, which is fabulous.
I was going to say, don't just hunker down and think that you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what you're talking about is, so earlier in my career, one of the things that I, wanted to always do was make sure that my own backyard was clean, before I would, come out and say anything. But you lose the opportunity and you lose the audience because they're wondering, like, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And what do we need to know about what you're doing? So don't be your own best kept secret.
Timing. Ready? Did you want to add to that?
I mean, I wish somebody had told me this before I had kids too, so patience, and a lot of patience when you're accelerating that hard. I think making sure other people are patient with you is also as important.
Setting expectations.
Setting the right expectations.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we don't do that very well, or I don't do that very well. Another thing that I think that it shouldn't take me by surprise, and something that I should know, but really inherently with every program, it comes back to bite us, which is change management.
Change management.
Change
Yes,
managing those
absolutely.
process changes, change managing the, And you realize that you have to do it pre-launch, you have to do it when you're setting strategy, you have to do it when you're setting the vision, you gotta do it pre-launch, you gotta do it during launch time, you gotta do it post-launch, and you gotta continue doing it through the adoption phase and thereafter.
You have to get
And it never ends.
full repeat
Right?
yourself.
And it's really sort of, yeah. And I just did not realize how much work and effort and grassrooting, because I mean, everybody has to be in charge of change, right? So you walk into a cafeteria, you just launch Teams, somebody's coming to you and you're asking them their experience, you're asking them their questions. You're advocating that change in that spot. So it's not just those emails, those trainings, those round bags. It's really something that has to be inherently part of IT's DNA.
Yeah, so can you give some specific tips and tricks in terms of helping with that change management? Like, what are some of the things that you found were really successful in helping?
I think one of the things that we really needed to, change management is inherently hard. It's hard because it's about people, and I think we've had that conversation right now here, that it's, when you're dealing with people, it's just a hard situation. You've got to have the right allies, you've got to have the right relationships that you can count on, you've got to have the right credibility that you can count on, your successes as a team that you can hopefully carry forward a little bit. But then obviously there's a tactical, how are you going to drive exactly what has changed in the process, how are you going to talk about it, do you want to go back and refresh them constantly? But most importantly, everyone has to own it.
Yeah, everybody, it all different
Everybody
levels.
has to own it. And I think you have to get that agreement from your stakeholders as well.
Yeah,
as part of that.
absolutely. So speaking of everybody, I know we've got some great people in the audience as well, and I assume some of you have some questions as well, so I'd like to invite you to raise your hand and ask this board, this panel, whatever you like.
Any questions so far?
I know the guys at Small Head.
Blow them away.
Yeah.
Birthday girl.
Thank you.
Where's the cake?
Where's the cake? It's right there. Well, it's for everybody here. Thank you all. This was a wonderful panel. My question is, if there was something that you would do differently now that you have the hindsight of 2020, what would that be?
Great question.
I mean, from a career perspective, I would tell you that I think personally, I wouldn't wait to be ready for the next roles. And I think, questioning that, thinking you're not fully there, walking back from it many times, I think that's definitely something that I would say that I would do differently. And I always encourage my team now to say, okay, if you're not ready for it, let's take the jump, because I think it's 60%, 70% there, let's just do it. And a lot of it comes via execution, right? So I think it's just so important to experience and learn as you experience. And maybe it's that perfection thing, right? So you want to be much more ready, more confident, and then approach it. So I think I would do that.
Be ready, be ready.
And I would say,
Be ready to go before you're ready.
Yes, exactly.
or
Right.
that, be honest and say, well, you don't know.
Right.
Because others will help you, and it's okay if you're not completely ready. Even if, you're applying for this new role, you're like this new boss, and it's okay to say, I don't really have a lot of experience in that, but this is what the experience that I do bring that I can actually apply to that. So, they can have perspective as well too, which would better inform you and allow you to grow.
I think that's a big thing is helping employees grow as well. We talked, when we were talking privately before, in terms of this culture of it's okay to fail, it's okay to learn, it's an iterative process, and cultivating your employees so that they can grow and they can try a continuous learning, a culture of continuous learning. And then perhaps some coaches as well, right? Do you guys bring in coaches in terms of cultivating your team?
Find your team.
Find your
That's supportive of you.
Yep.
Open, sharing. And it doesn't have to be this super formal, I haven't met, just, like I said, get people who have experience that's relevant to you at that time in that moment. Most people want to share their experiences. I mean, we're all taking Tuesday nights to share our experiences because, we had, for me, I'm here, it's a happy accident. I mean,
Right, you don't go very far.
but I mean, in my role.
Oh, in your role.
Right? It's not like I woke up and said, I want to be the CIO of Timco's. I mean, that I had no idea what it was. And I became a CIO very much by accident. And it's only now that I can look back and say, oh, that happened then when I was running my own company and it sparked this interest. And then I went back to doing what I was trained to do, which was develop software or lead engineering teams. And then something else happened and it was, oh, this feels really different because they asked me to come do some role. And I didn't even know what I was getting into, right? So it's very hard for me to say what I do differently because it wasn't a direct path. But it all was possible because I was, well, one is I think I'm very curious, but when it didn't make sense to me, I went and found someone who it might make sense of. And I asked them, and most people want to share. And if they don't, you move on, you know?
Yeah, so be curious, be curious. Set the objective, know where you're going, share that vision with people, and then be curious in terms of how you're getting there and ask some questions. Well, I saw you, gentlemen.
I actually have a question for you
yes,
guys before I pass it on to my good friend Paul. This is maybe a little controversial, but it's kind of touching on what you guys are talking about. And there seems to be kind of like a theme or a trend where there's this anxiety or this nervousness to maybe take on the next challenge, or maybe there's some self-doubt or perfection. And do you feel that maybe this has to do with being women in a largely male-dominated field, possibly? And if the case, then it sounds like Sharon was giving some useful advice for how to get out there and how to build alliances. And even if not, if that's not the case, if you think, no, it's totally has nothing to do with being a woman, is there anything you would give advice-wise to women or men in the audience that want to either be a good ally or want to take it upon themselves to push themselves past maybe what gender norms of like society push on them?
Okay, I'm going to answer this one first. So that personally, I love being a woman in a male-dominated business. I just like what I'm sure about that. I think that in general, whatever you have, you should use to your advantage. If you're a woman, be a woman. If you're, I don't know what else. If you're an adrenaline junkie, then use that. It's like whatever you are, it's be who you are. This is what these women were saying. What Wendy was saying before. It's like be who you are, whoever that is, and use that to your advantage. Yeah, I mean, I remember this gorgeous woman once. She was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous black woman. Said she was having trouble getting funding. And I said, and she said it was because she was black and a woman. She had pitched to me, and her pitch wasn't very good. It had nothing to do with the fact that she was black or that she was a woman. She just gave a lousy pitch, so I didn't invest in her. But later she developed a good pitch. Then she was very memorable because of that. So she was memorable, but she could use that to her advantage. Was my coaching to her. But ladies, what do you say? I mean, you might have different perspectives in terms of what you've experienced. I think it's great to be a woman.
I don't.
Hear me, Lord.
I don't have.
Ready.
Fear doesn't hold me back. I haven't. I only just recently discovered when people started telling me that I was, a female in a male-dominated world. And I've been around for a while, so I'm senior, and so that's apparently a thing as well.
It's smart.
So yay. But good, right? But what I will tell you is this. I will tell you that whether we're male or female or an immigrant or we were born here or we speak the language or we don't or we're very technical or not, most of us are afraid. Most of us are afraid. And how you've learned to cope with that is what matters. And so one of the easiest things that I learned to do is realize that all the, white men sitting around the table or the Indian men sitting around the table, as is the case in most of the companies I've worked for the last 15 years, they have the same, kinds of insecurities that I have. And in fact, I, by being different, am a fearful thing, a fearsome thing as well. And so knowing that we're all coming from some place like that is very powerful. John Madden, great philosopher and football coach, said, he gives this great example. He's like, if you've got, let's say you come up against this other team on the court, And let's do basketball. You've got Steph Curry, you've got KD, you've got all the good guys on your team, and the other team has big injuries, lots of injuries, and they're not going to be able to bring all their cool players out onto the court. What do? Do you say like, oh, well, those poor guys, we'll sit out Steph and KD and the rest of the guys? No, like that's your unfair advantage. It's bought and paid for. You practiced, you worked for that, you made that. You bring that onto the court and you wipe the court with their behinds. Right? And so that's like if you walk in the room and it suddenly becomes apparent that your unfair advantage is you're female, you wipe the boardroom table with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it anyway.
So I'll answer that with a story. So I always said that it was great being a woman in technology because there was no line in the restroom. So it was good. And then I joined Brocade as the CIO, and I had the HR person coming in for my orientation, and she was like, oh my gosh, we're so thrilled to have a woman at the executive table now. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize this. And so like, oh my God, all these people are just so happy, we're looking up to you and everything. And it was right before Christmas, and so I was invited to the executive Christmas party. It was a weekend. And so I went home that night and I said, guess what I learned today, honey? I am the only woman on the executive staff. And I go, and you are the only husband going to the Christmas party. And he said, that's okay, I'll go to the spa with the girls.
And you said, no, you won't.
I was going to say, in response to the fear thing, like you, I believe all of us have it, and it is what you do with it. So, some of my biggest achievements came because I was afraid of what was going to happen if not. So I moved to Silicon Valley in 2002. I was super excited. I'm a technologist. I'm finally coming to the Holy Land, right? I'm really excited about it. I arrive at Knight Ridder Digital as their new CTO, and we supported 28 newspaper websites around the country, and came to work at like 7:30 in the morning, ready to meet my team for the first time and really engage with them. And I wanted some quiet time before it happened. Well, at 7:45, someone walked in and told me, all the websites are down. All of them. I had to fix that, like, immediately. Like, it just, like you said, you sat in and you realized that there were outages. And I was a single mom in the middle of a very nasty divorce, having brought my child out here to a very expensive place from Chicago.
Right.
And at some level, you have to, whether it's a small fear or a big fear like that, you gotta look at it and say, okay, how am I gonna use this for myself and to do something better, right? But I think fear can be an incredible motivator rather than something that holds you back, but you have to engage it. You have to, you have to look it in the eye and say, I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. So my prayer before this thing started was that, people would learn something, they would have fun, they would, make other friends, that you guys would meet other people while you're here. And I never thought that this would be such a tremendous life lesson in terms of like what to do with fear, how to achieve your own greatness with fear, because everybody has emotions and things that they go through. Oh, that's awesome. You have a question? Oh, Paul,
This is a small one, maybe.
Okay, small's good. Small first, then Paul. You're gonna go Paul first.
I gotta get
He's
Paul
microphone
first.
too. Okay, Paul. Yeah, go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
I'm okay.
You're next.
Either way.
Thanks. Thank you.
First of all, this is a very wonderful panel. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm a early stage company with a revolutionary infrastructure technology, and the biggest problem I have to find out is the product market fit and where a radical technology can take place. So and I heard Sharon's descriptions of what she's doing and the outages problem and the tools you have to use. My question is very simple. If I give you a magic wand and I could solve your top 3 problems that keep you awake at night, what would they be?
They're not technology.
No. Well, unless it's around, security, right? So, if somebody could make it not economically profitable for people to want to be attacking us all the time, I think we'd sleep better at night. I don't, but then the next two, or the other two, I shouldn't say next, because I don't know that they'd be in this order. They're not. My challenges are around scaling around people, creating this environment where we can work together. They're really mostly about people. And so it's not that a technology solution will come and have value, but I don't know the magic wand that's going to make two people understand each other and see eye to eye in a room.
We'll work
and
on
look
that.
at the problem.
He's a very smart guy, it's been for years. Well, you don't know what he's doing.
Well, I'll tell you that I think a couple of areas. One of them, I know security is a large area, and I do run security and compliance at Aptus as well, but it's actually not on the security side that I would say I would have my top three. All of them would be centered around frictionless processes. You really have to remove that friction out of those processes, so with sales, working with marketing, and it's all around the silos, right? Because everyone optimizes for that. No one's optimizing and stitching across. And I think that's where an IT leader spends a lot of their time in that lead to cash, because you're trying to get to higher revenue, you're trying to scale your business, you're trying to do a lot of those foundational aspects. And all that comes into that lead to cash pipeline, eventually supporting your customers. But I think that's one of them. The other one, which I think everyone has a religion on, is collaboration. Can we get a collaboration tool set that everyone just loves? Like Zoom, but now it does all the other things too.
Yes.
Like Zoom.
So is that one of the places where you see for digital transformation would be in collaboration? There's IT, there's HR, there's of course finance is huge.
Yeah, and I think there's so many disparate tools, there's religion around those tools, it's very hard, if somebody asks me, what do you love? I'll say, I have a religion around it, and I love Slack, right? Or somebody will, there's just too much there, and it's very hard. It's very, very hard to bring it together, and it takes a lot of energy to influence people to change over there.
That's great. Do either of you two want to comment on that, or?
I want Pokemon Go, right? They released it. There were no, change management programs. There wasn't any, 3-year ELA. But 10 million people downloaded it, no instructions, began going out there and using their devices in completely new ways, catching all the Pokemon they could, right? Augmented reality, that's pretty cool, right? Collaborating naturally, getting together in teams and groups and just doing what the app guys wanted on pick a device, any device, right? Even people who didn't even know about Pokemon. Where are those apps? I want those apps. That's what I want. I want something that works that way. And by the way, that was free.
I'd say that I'd weigh in. That sounds great. I love that. Collaboration is huge. It's one of the things that we're working on as well too. Everyone's got their favorites and their religion, and for the kind of the bigger good of the company, we really have to get together, and we're starting to kind of win that war, where people are looking at kind of the bigger picture as opposed to themselves as just an individual. At least we are at MindBody. But I'm kind of like waiting for like the next shoe to drop that I don't know about yet.
So something predicted, Okay, thank you. I was still here.
Just a quick question. So involved in a lot of transformations in different places. So I can, a lot of bruises from what you guys are talking about. So it's amazing, great discussion. And I think there were a lot of takeaways about the collaboration, the horizontal technology, all of that good stuff. I think the biggest takeaway, which is probably was all of you talking about humanizing the data and the technology. That was my big takeaway today, make it human. So I just had one pointed question for you. The question was, so some of the technology that we all put in, AI, we talk about all of it, sometimes actually makes people irrelevant, right? We are actually taking their livelihoods, their college tuitions, making them irrelevant. So as we talk about adoption and about, change, how do you guys deal with situations where you're actually making people irrelevant? You're automating something they're doing. Because it's a fundamental thing, I think. There's fear on their side, but given where we are sometimes, we are forced to basically, so how do you deal with that? Because you talked about humanization, I want to take the other view.
I've written a bunch of articles on that, which I would love to, I have lots to say on that topic. In IT, we are making people more productive and more relevant in general. And if we can make the processes that they follow and the things that they do more efficient, then that is relevance writ large across our companies. In my experience, so about 40% of all of the tasks that we used to do manually in IT 3 years ago, we now do autonomously. And the size of my staff has doubled. But we do different things. And the things that we do are more impactful in terms of helping all of our employees to be more productive, which leads to better product, which helps the people who buy our product to also be more productive. There's a virtuous cycle to that as well. So, one of the things that IT people don't do well in general, unless they are software developers, is they don't write good code. They might configure infrastructure well, they might build amazing operational processes, but the machine can always write better code than my people can. And so my people build and document the process, build and document the function, and the machine refines the code, so it's more effective, more efficient. And so I'm not trying to remake old school infrastructure people into people who can automate. I'm having them describe what they do, and then I'm using some beautiful tools, some low-code tools and no-code tools to turn that into code that the machine can then read and refine. So I'm not replacing people, but I'm getting people to focus on things that are much more powerful. Now, that's not true in every industry. I mean, you can't find a Tower Records anywhere anymore, and so people who used to work in Tower Records, had to find other jobs. So that there's always that. But I don't think we're replacing people. I think we're making people more productive. Elevating people.
Elevating, absolutely.
We talk about augmenting intelligence here when we talk about our products. But I guess my question back to you is, why is AI any different than when the first computer came in and started doing calculations that people used to sit around and run? I mean, this has been the story of humanity. And the question is, not that we're not going to do that, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't cause some of the problems we've already done? And I have to tell you, if I had the answer to that, I probably wouldn't be a CIO sitting on this panel, right? I mean, those are big, huge societal problems. So I think for me, as I look to do this either within my team, it's about doing that enablement. People spend so much time doing busy work, and some people love that, and those people I think are in trouble. Right. But always were in trouble, right?
But there'll be other busy work for them to do. I mean, this is also the emphasis.
But it's our job to take the people who are doing busy work but have the capacity to do other things that machines can't yet. Maybe they will someday, but can't yet. AI hasn't solved.
Yeah.
AI really isn't yet, right? It's not really intelligent. So it's really about how do you allow them to deliver what they probably were actually hired for, but all of the gets in their way every day.
Yeah, remove the crap. Okay, sorry, that's one of the things. I think we have time for like one more question, maybe two. Okay, Nikki, I know this thing.
Actually, many of you probably already answered it. I was going to ask that being a CIO, has a lot of responsibilities. I was going to ask, what's keeping you up at night?
For me, it's, I guess, well, first of all, I'm tired, so I sleep. But I think for me, the biggest challenge right now is figuring out how to truly enable a global team. These time zones and different viewpoints, and I don't want to have an organization where all decisions are made at headquarters, or all the product is developed in one location. But I just don't have the I don't know, we just don't have the capacity to work 24/7. We don't have the human ability to make the connections we need. The tools aren't really there. I mean, Zoom video conferences, Zoom slightly better than pick some other one, but it's still not as real as working together in teams. And yet we have this real desire to be truly connected, truly all on the same quest or page. I don't know how to make that happen. Instead, I have to create rules. I have to say, well, this team is going to do this, and you guys have to, be second in line from. I have to make these big dumb rules instead of these beautiful nuanced things that we might in an organism. So I don't know what to do about that. That keeps me awake.
I think for me, it's talent. It's really, really hard to find talent, and I think Randy was talking about this earlier, which is sort of on the convergence of technology and business. The technology being secondary in some ways, although we are a technology team and we do all of those implementations, I feel like it can be taught a little bit faster sometimes. And I think those business skills, being able to put yourself into the lead gen leader's shoes and talk through what their lead gen process is and how that's impactful to the sales conversions that we're seeing, and just that, and why demand gen is much more lucrative in one way versus the other. And those are things that I feel like the IT team really needs to step into more. And I would say almost everybody that I want to hire in my team now needs to have at least a certain portion of their skills be all sort of really business skills, who understand the process, understand the business, and whether they're supporting sales or delivery or CSMs or support, etc.
It's back to that common vision.
Yeah, and I think that talent is something that we really need to groom quickly, because there's a lot of technologists, but not enough people who are doing both.
Is that grooming of the talent, is that something that you actually invest in your own time and your own research all the time?
Quick question just about that. I literally had this conversation with my team on how they have to be on top of the product and process and understand to give any strategic direction from data perspective. How do you do that if it is a global team and you are really trying to groom this?
Which goes back to Ben's point,
This
is definitely a large struggle.
Super hard.
I actually had a conversation with another CIO, and I asked them, listen, I want to get on the phone because you have this global team and I have a global team and I'm having some challenges. So I'm very much with Randy on that, with Julie, we were just talking about that. It is hard in that scenario, but I think hiring for the right skills, and this is not skills, but it's really sort of the curiosity, those things, being purposeful, wanting to make a difference in the businesses, because you're going to learn this. You're not going to come in maybe knowing all of the business process, but you're going to learn some of it. And I think
Not
that's very
necessarily
important as well.
about the skills and experience as it is their personal attributes.
Right.
And
And wanting
trying
to
to figure out whether or not they've got those attributes.
That's right.
I was looking for IT to be kind of the healthy tension in the room where, as a positive thing, right? And doing that through curiosity and asking questions and diving in and making people think more deeply, so you arrive at a better outcome.
Yeah.
You know, people walk into a room with kind of their predisposed sort of ideas, and they really haven't had the opportunity to explore them, and I think that's what our role is to help them kind of peel that apart a little bit, and to listen to others and explore that, and you come out with a better outcome.
Yeah, that's great, that's great. Nick, I want to do one quick question here and then one in the back. Sorry, Nastia, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for sharing your perspective and for showing that, also for being vulnerable and sharing that people do experience fear, people do experience anxiety and doubts and different factors. Most of you talked about that your biggest challenge has to do around teams and people. Can you quickly share some of the challenges or an example of team friction or leadership issues or cultural issues that you face that tend to slow things down or make things not move forward for you folks?
Who wants to answer that? One of you answers, then we're going to wrap it up.
Well, I'd just say that, you know, some of the things are like getting people to open up and to, you know, think about like how they work in a team as opposed to how they are at their own purpose. You know, you try to build your team with that sort of, you know, personality, but still there are times when all of a sudden somebody wants to do something because they own it. And they're like, oh, I hate that word. You know, because it's just so closed. And so, you know, I think those are the things that surprise you.
Yeah. There was one woman in the back. Yeah, you want to ask a question? I'm going to wrap it up with it.
Yes. Just a question about, you know, you've all spoken about how much it is. Oh, thank you.
Do I need it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it helps.
Yeah, so you all spoke about how, you know, it's so much a people thing, and while you're all technologists, I've also found that I almost want to see if we can have a graph, and that clearly says, and you know, I prefer the logical side of things, but if we could have a graph that said, you know, as you grow in your career, how much of your time do you spend more on people issues than on, you know, decision making or on things like that, right? So I would love to know how much should we expect generally? What's a good number, good percentage of the time you spend on the people side of things versus the, you know, the technology side of things?
Okay, percentage, just go down the road, percentage.
I'd say it's 100.
100%.
Okay.
I try to.
Well, it's all, go ahead.
I still really like text. I try to spend a little time, but it is, and the notion that I actually make many of the decisions is sort of laughable to me. But, you know, it's about, and maybe I do by approving things, but really I'm hoping that I'm enabling the team to bring me the right answers or the elements that can create the right answer versus me making a decision. If I'm making a decision, I often feel I haven't done something right.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we heard some great things. I want to thank my panelists here for doing such a great job, and I hope you guys will take some good things away from you about setting objectives and your team being real. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to invite the TIBCO folks. And they're giving away 2 phones. Are these phones or what are they? Tablets. And in the last event, 2 of my friends won them.
Pedro Diaz.
Ticket. No. 039887.
Oh, that's cool. Congratulations. Gavin won. Okay, Gavin won.
So let's take a picture if you don't mind. Yes.
And one more?
Okay,
we'll get the second one.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it is, they look the same. 039898. 039898. Does anybody want to check me?
I'll take it.
988.
See that number?
numbers are all the same.
We're all.
I've got glasses.
886.
886?
886.
It's some random.
Yeah.
Your call. Got the best numbers.
Okay, so I think it's this way, yes? Okay, hang on. Just a moment, I'm going to turn the mic on. 039893. 039893.
Wow.
To the pink courtesy phone.
Okay.
Okay.
One more shift.
One more. Someone should just leave out and say.
Great company.
039899.
Oh, there you are.
Wow, that was hard.
That was
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for this great event. Thank you, Ben, for moderating, and Wendy, Praniti, Marty, and Sharon. Special